What's up, class? Professor Calderon here. Welcome to Spring 2026 Cinema History. About me, I've been teaching film for over 25 years. I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised. I grew up off Crenshaw, matter of fact. At first, I lived off of Crenshaw and Florence for a while when I was a young child. And then when we were 8, we moved to Linwood, Compton area. And between the two, that's where I grew up. I pretty much started making movies in high school or TV programs. We had a multimedia class. And believe it or not, that was probably the only class at that and auto shop. Those two were the only two classes I got A's in. So I was not a good student. After high school, I went to the military. I was in the Air Force. I was an aircraft maintenance inspector, or what they call an ISO inspector. Every 10,000 flight hours, they would bring the aircraft into a hangar. We would scrub it down, break it down, tear it apart, look for any micro cracks, stress fractures, replace all types of systems, fix anything that was broken or need to be replaced, put it back together, flew it, put it back into rotation. It took the process, if done properly, not under like the stresses of war or combat, about maybe a month. So that gave me, how I say, the understanding of the importance of having a schedule, which came in handy later on in filmmaking because you have to have a schedule. When you start a film, you just can't have an open-ended production. It has to have a start date and a finish date so you can budget it, and then someone has to keep that whole project on schedule within that date. So it also gave me an excellent eye for detail. If you can imagine, we would have these little tiny jeweler loops about that big. And we were literally going through the whole aircraft looking for tiny microscopic cracks with that little jeweler's loop. And the aircraft was like a flying warehouse. So it was huge, huge. So by the time the camera came around more professionally, I should say in graduate school, I just applied that detail or that eye for detail to the screen or the image. So that kind of, I said, made me valuable on other graduate students' set. They would always ask me to sit and monitor the project for continuity, meaning what has changed from the last shot that has to be reset because we need to do a second take or a third take or a fourth take. I have a good eye for that, which is fun. I got to work with a lot of different filmmakers from all around the world in graduate school. Some crazy experiences, some wonderful experiences. To this day, I still collaborate with my mentor from graduate school at the American Film Institute. That's where I earned my master's in screenwriting. So it was a wonderful experience. After the military, I went to UC Davis, where I wrote, produced, and directed a handful of original plays. And I was accepted to UCLA, so I transferred to UCLA after 2 years at UC Davis. And in UCLA, I got my degree in philosophy, metaphysics, a narrow field called epistemology, which is literally theories of knowledge. What is it that we call knowledge? What does it mean to know something? What is the criteria for knowledge? How do we obtain knowledge? Where does it come from? So, and that also made my writing stronger because now I have this much, much deeper understanding. I mean, really deep understanding of not just knowledge in terms of language, but pre-linguistic knowledge, which is 80% of how we communicate. And communication is key in filmmaking. It's all communication. You're conveying an idea, linking it to another idea, so that in the mind of an audience, they come to a conclusion. And you're sort of doing it by not telling them what the idea is, you're showing them the idea. So that kind of comes full circle on those storytelling methods, both in the script and visually as a director. How do we convey that idea and that emotion? As I always tell my students in writing and film, emotion is our currency. If the audience doesn't feel anything, they're not going to like the movie. So how do you get them to feel something? What are the mechanisms for that? I mean, I've studied it down to the level of the neurons in the brain. So, and we touch on that a little bit. It's nothing rocket science about it, but some very interesting stuff. This film class is very interesting because you get to see a lot of films that you never otherwise probably would have heard of. Some of them are really bad, but they're important. Some of them really good, and they're important. So you have to watch both of them. And oddly enough, some people, they get it. They see the bad ones. Not that they're bad in the way they're made. There could be bad in subject matter. Like, for example, Birth of a Nation. It's probably one of the most racist films out there. Yet, it's important to be in the National Archives because, one, it did a lot of technological innovations, and two, it encapsulates the mindset of that era. And you have to preserve that mindset so that we don't return to it, which is kind of what's happening right now in the US. You know, there's this mindset that's never left. So films like that are important to have in the historical context so that we can learn from, which is great for filmmakers and even students like yourself. So as you can tell, I am not in Los Angeles right now. I'm doing some traveling. After COVID, or as I say, during COVID, all the classes went online. So this one went online as well. So I am right now in Vietnam, Da Nang, Vietnam. I should say Da Nang, and working on some projects, but still teaching the class. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. And if you have any questions, I know people always, every single class, what's your favorite movie? I don't have a favorite particular movie, but I have a handful of movies. One of them would be very relevant right now, The Battle of Algiers. And it's about the French occupation of Algeria. How after the French, how we helped them kick the Nazis out in World War II, they turned around and did the same thing that the Nazis did to them, but only this time the French was doing it to Algeria. This movie was so well made that it won the highest honors in the French Film Festival, the Cannes Film Festival. And then right after it won the honors, they turned around and banned the film because it made them look so bad. So it's another important film in terms of the way it's made, neorealism. None of the actors in this movie are actors except for one person. Yet the performances were amazing. The way it's made was amazing. So that's one of my favorite films. Another one is Cinema Paradiso. And this one is an Italian movie, and it's just, how I say it, it's one of those movies that really makes you feel good. It's a coming of life story about a young boy's love for film, for cinema. And the ending is just magical. It kind of really touches you. Matter of fact, it was voted to have the best ending of all movies ever made. So that's one of my favorite. Another one is a Japanese movie called Ran by Akira Kurosawa. That movie is a tour de force. I mean, it is just amazing. So Kurosawa was the premier filmmaker of all of Japan. Still is. He was up there. He's like the one. And he has several masterpieces that he's created. Run, they say, is his crowning achievement. And he took King Lear's Shakespeare and put it in ancient samurai days. And man, does it deliver. Visually just stunning. Yeah, I mean, this bold filmmaking. You know, they built this authentic turn of the century castle and burned it down for one take. It's just amazing filmmaking. So, Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. They killed radio. Anything Spike Lee. And another one would be Boys in the Hood. Not just in terms of, you know, I mean, that's the era I grew up in. You know, we were definitely afraid of gangs and didn't think we would make it past 21, right? So, and John Singleton was a friend of mine. Matter of fact, he was a huge reason why I'm still in film today. You know, a big reason. So, really, he was a really good friend of mine and really encouraged me to make movies. Matter of fact, I worked with him on his very first student film. So, Boys in the Hood, and, you know, Mr. Miyagi's Flying Castle for animation. Charlie Chaplin's great. So, yeah. I have another film coming out pretty soon, in a couple months. It's a documentary. That's what I do mostly now, documentary films. And I teach. So, any questions about me, please send them to me. I'm more than happy to answer them. And if for some reason, for this particular class, there's a lot going on in the world today. Things are radically different. If for some reason you start the class and you miss more weeks than, you just drop off, I'm not going to fail you. I'm first going to give you an incomplete, okay? And then you'll have time to come back and make it up. So don't worry about if something happens and you do not have access online to a computer, nor you cannot get in touch with me, and the class ends and you're missing assignments, I'm going to give you an incomplete, and then you will have time to make it up later. And that will be incumbent upon you to make it up, okay? Other than that, please enjoy the class, watch the movies, watch them with some friends, and dig into the textbook, and enjoy. All right.